My name is Ritika Patil, and I'm a research intern at the Institute of Chinese Studies, New Delhi. It is with great pleasure that I extend a warm welcome to all to another edition of the ICS Wednesday seminar titled Bay of Bengal Integration Past, Present, and Future. BIMSTEC, since its establishment, has held five summits. The sixth summit, which was to be held in Bangkok on the 3rd and 4th of September, has been postponed by the Thai government as the country is in the process of forming a new government. It was at this summit that Bangladesh would have assumed the chairmanship of this group. The grouping benefits from strategic location, rich resources, and shared cultural heritage, offering high trade potential and economic complementarities. Positioned uniquely in the Indo-Pacific, BIMSTEC can serve as a bridge between South and Southeast Asia. However, in a rapidly changing global landscape, member states face common challenges that need to be addressed to advance regional integration. This seminar will explore the current trends, challenges, and future directions for Bay of Bengal integration. The speaker for today's seminar is Professor Prabir Dey from the Research and Information System for Developing Countries, New Delhi, and is also an actual fellow at the Institute of Chinese Studies, ICS, New Delhi. Professor Dey is also the founding editor of the Journal of Asian Economic Integration, SAGE, and the Journal of Land Ports and Border Economic Regulation. His recent publication is an edited volume titled 30 Years of ASEAN-India Relations Towards Indo-Pacific, published by Routledge in 2024. He specializes in international economics with a focus on trade and development. The chair for today's seminar is Professor Biswajit Thar. He is a distinguished professor at the Council for Social Development, New Delhi, and an advisor to the Asia Pacific Research and Training Network on Trade under UNESCO. Professor Thar is also an honorary fellow at the ICS New Delhi. He serves on the board of the Inter-University Center for IPS Studies, Government of Kerala, and has worked in collaboration with several intergovernmental organizations. He has numerous publications in respected national and international journals, along with being a regular columnist for national dailies. Before I hand over to the chair, I would like to ask all participants to follow a few housekeeping rules. All participants shall be muted during the seminar. Questions may be posted in the chat box along with your name and affiliation. Alternatively, you may use the raise your hand option during the interactive session. You shall then be called upon to unmute yourself. Thank you. I now hand over to the chair. Over to you, Professor Dhar. Thank you.
Thank you, Ritika, and a very good afternoon to all of you, and especially the speaker, Professor Prabir Dey. We have worked together with RIS for several years, and I'm quite aware of his very good work on regional integration that he's been doing for a very long time. This topic, the topic that he's chosen for today's seminar is particularly important for India, especially in light of India's economic integration efforts, and this region holds a lot of promise as far as even India is concerned. It's a very large market, and with the South Asian free trade agreement not going anywhere, many of us are looking at BIMSTEC as a possible new formation in terms of an FTA. So without much ado, and I'm not going to take any more time, I'll hand over to Prabir. Whatever comments and observations I have to make, I'll make at the end of Prabir's presentation. So Prabir, you have the floor, and how long will you take? So we can just plan.
Maybe, sir, I was told told to restrict within 30 to 35 minutes.
Fine, fine. I think that'll be good enough. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right, sir. So thank you, sir, for the introduction, and it's a great pleasure for me coming to Institute of Chinese Studies. I'm an adjunct fellow here, and it's always pleasure to being introduced by Professor Vishwajit Dhar, an eminent scholar, economist, professor, and he was my former boss at RIS. I can go on, and also a good friend. I'm a student, and it's a great learning experience always, I had when he worked at RIS. So, and I also, it's in this opportunity of making a presentation or a talk on Bay of Bengal. I see in the list of participants so many, the known people who have attended and agreed to stay. But, I see the Ambassador Sumit Nakandala, who was the first Secretary General of BIMSTEC, who has also kindly agreed to join despite his busy schedule. I can see, in the list of participants, Dr. Banerjee, Professor Somayas Mathur, Professor Patricia Oberoi, and many, I've seen here, my colleagues at RIS, there are so many here. So, and thank you very much for coming. And 30 to 35 minutes is not possible, to cover everything on the Bay of Bengal Corporation. At the same time, I have to add a disclaimer because I work with MEA organization. I have to restrict myself in sharing comments and observations. In a way, I'm a government employee, so I cannot just go and talk on the recorded on the camera that the countries are not doing well or some political leaders are not doing well. No, I cannot do that. Very, very frank. What I'm going to do is that there are some prospects, there are challenges. I can bring some of them, and these are purely my my own understanding, purely my own views, nothing to do with my organization. As an economist, I always prefer to present some facts and figures. So I will burden you with some data and statistics. You don't have to listen to all of them. And there are graphs, figures, maps. All the maps are purely drawn from, purely collected from common sources, nothing to do with the political boundaries. And we'll discuss about Bay of Bengal. We'll discuss about what's the progress we have done in the Bay of Bengal. Bay of Bengal is not BIMSTEC. Bay of Bengal and BIMSTEC do different things. And towards the end, I will touch upon some of the development in the BIMSTEC, and then 4 or 5 slides are there towards the end, kind of recommendations, way forward, concluding remarks and takeaways. I was told that many of the participants are from universities and academic organizations. So I made the slides a little bit in academic fashion. There are many young scholars who have joined just to disseminate some information, to go back to the history and to present here and document them so that young scholars, it will be coming very handy to them. They don't need to refer 20,000 documents, so that they will refer to 20 slides in that sense. So let me now share my PPT. I think is this visible to all of you, my PowerPoint? Can you see my PPT?
Yes, Professor Dev, it is visible.
Okay. Anytime if the slides don't move, kindly alert me. Well, Bay of Bengal integration, there is a colon, past, present, and future. Not possible for me to cover everything in the past, neither to cover everything on the present. And I'm not a fortune teller. I won't be able to talk about more about its future. So what I'm going to do, I will rather just see. Yeah, I will rather, talk about little bit about the past, present, and future, putting them in, connecting each other. Some of the discussions obviously will be disjoint, may like disjoint presentations. That's also, first of all, I put in an apology in the beginning. Now, if you look at the Bay of Bengal, what we know, and this is the map I borrowed from Ambassador Sumit when he was Secretary General. I think this is the best politically correct map on the Bay of Bengal. And you can see in the map that 7, 8, 9, 10 countries shared Bay of Bengal water. I need to tell you that many people, in this continent, in the Bay of Bengal region, they have an issue with the word called Bengal. Some people from the western part of India will always be telling, have been telling me why it should be called Bay of Bengal. It should call a bay, something like, Bay of BIMSTEC perhaps. But, I'm sorry to tell you that we have to go by the history and we need to continue with that. It should be Bay of Bengal, and we should, keep it, without distorting the history. Now, Bay of Bengal region, as the chair rightly said, there are three things: strong civilization links, shared culture. We speak the same language, same cuisine, same music, little bit here and there, modifications, and we share the same water. These three things are very common in the Bay of Bengal. If the three major identity are commons, we feel high commonness among each other. We feel, we are same people, like that. And the Bay of Bengal at the same time, they are very rich resources, young population, economic size, trade, growing trade relation. There is a deep harbor like Colombo, many other spots, also known for Bay of Bengal. Historically, it's a land for the poor people, high poverty, natural disaster-prone area, the high violence, sectarian violence, within the country, between the nations, so on and so forth. So mixed kind of, if you look at a history like that. At the same time, what happened? PowerPoint is, don't see my PowerPoint.
It's not moving, Covid.
Yeah, even I don't see the PowerPoint actually. Can you see now?
No, we can see the PowerPoint, but it's
okay.
not moving.
Okay. It was so. There are, in the Bay of Bengal countries, there are something around 10. If you touch, if you touch, if you count the countries sharing the Bay of Bengal waters, the 10. But if you look at Bay of Bengal offshoot, it is an offshoot of Bay of Bengal Cooperation. It's an official manifestation. It's called BIMSTEC. There are 7 member countries. It's the formal manifestation of Bay of Bengal. Bay of Bengal, basically the 10 countries. It's an open region. One can go and add many more countries if needed. And the BIMSTEC, which is an offshoot of the Bay of Bengal, official integration process arrangement, it connects SAARC, ASEAN, or if you like to say this way, South Asia with Southeast and East Asia, whichever way you prefer to. BIMSTEC, SAARC, ASEAN, these are the official integration process. But South Asia, Southeast Asia, and East Asia, they are the region, they are the integration actually move on the region. So I leave it to here, who would like to use in the way you want to. For me, as in, living in this part of the world, northeast of India's northeast plays a pivotal role in terms of connectivity between the South and Southeast Asia. But the question that I pose to me and to the audience, that this Bay of Bengal, what kind of integration we are looking for? Is it economic integration or political integration, or maybe a mix of both? Economic integration means countries, they exchange in free flow of goods and services, resources, capital, labor, etc., that lead to, going by the Professor Bela Balasa's, seminal contributions, they lead to a political integration sometime. But there are papers which talked about that it depends on the economy where you belong. It depends on the time frame. the way economic union moved on, that time frame may not come back, right? We live in a very disturbed political, and it's a prolonged going on, sometime pandemic, sometime, war between the trade wars, sometimes kind of a physical war like that. So is that the political integration is important to move the economic integration? So we really do not know the causal linkages. So far, Bay of Bengal is concerned, it's politically very well connected so far history is concerned. So far history is concerned. We are same land, got divided. And in the contemporary period, we talk about an economic integration. So the way Bay of Bengal presents to me, these are basically a weak background. But in the today's world, when you look at economic integrations, this is the most important part is that each one, 7 countries I have picked up, and if you add on 3 more, Singapore, Indonesia, and Malaysia, you will get, it can be extended, like from the south to Thailand, map will be different. So it is basically the land part, 75% is connecting. So they are physically connected. This is the connected geography. Geography, I mean the land one. There are, of course, 25% is the waterborne, ocean, sea. Both are, very important when you talk about an integrations. Now, the challenge in the history, there were these line in between were not there. Some countries continue to having the same lines, but in the history, these were not there, like Bangladesh. It was very much part of a British Indian in the previous. So also Myanmar. Thailand used to be known as a Siam, and Sri Lanka was under the British colony, and etc. etc. So we have drawn many lands, and as this Bay of Bengal, the land got divided into many countries. So the challenge is to maintain the peace on the land, and the land management is the major chunk of the cooperation between the countries. Very similar to what we have seen in the ASEAN, Southeast Asia, and many other parts. But to me, it is a kind of a garland. If you Bay of Bengal is a happening place in the maritime front. Once it is the land, and also in the maritime front, there are several projects in terms of pipeline connectivity, so on and so forth. There is no point going in details. So all I like to add here is that challenges on the land is so high. There are also opportunities. If you come to the ocean part, sea or water part, it's 25% roughly of the surface. Sorry, can disappear. Can you see my slides? Yeah. So these are the small clusters where lots of projects are happening. So obviously the countries, in the Bay of Bengal, they will be having more trade on the border. So that's what I see here, the rise in the BBIN context, which are the 4 countries part of Bay of Bengal or a BIMSTEC. There is a rising border trade or trade at the border. 256 Indian rupee billion. The border trade has increased up to just after the COVID, 826 billion, roughly touching a trillion Indian rupees border trade. 23-24 figure, I had a figure up to 2000 January. I guess this will be little less than 826 billion Indian rupees. So what I see, this is trade across the border, which is rising because the border infrastructure has improved. At the same time, we see a rise in non-traditional security threats. We are opening the border, but we are at the same time, each and everyone is inviting high amount of non-traditional security threats in drug trafficking, human trafficking, so many threats. So the questions comes in my mind that economic integration, laissez-faire, is actually the benefits. Somebody should work on it. Might be getting wiped out because of the threats that each and every one, 7 countries, 10 countries, they are, bringing it inside. But in context of India, when you look at land border, I think the 2 points I need to tell you that India's land borders, there's phenomenal change happening in the last 10, 12 years. India looks at the land border as a connector, and honorable chair of the session, he has been contributing on that. Land border in the South Asia is an opportunity, and India is primarily now thinking to convert these border hearts into a border economic zone, very similar like the Greater Mekong region. This time might have come or may not be because of changing things in the Bangladesh. There might be some slowing down the process, but India looking at land border quite seriously, and there is a huge amount of transformation happen. There are unstable situation in Bangladesh and Myanmar that might pose some threats or some challenging task while going into a deeper integration through the border connectivity. Bangladesh obviously will come in my talk, but what happened in Bangladesh, the Maritime Fund, they, because of the issues in the Red Sea, as you know that maritime choke points, there are major choke points. One is in eastern side, which is in the Panama Canal, one in the western side, which is in Yemen and the Red Sea, because these two choke points are actually affecting Bay of Bengal countries heavily in terms of their trade. Now, Bangladesh has moved most of their exports, ready-made garments, by land. This is before the changing over the government, the guard in the country, in the scenario. Most of the garments exporters, they are moving by ocean to Jebel Ali and Gulf, and then exporting by the Emirates and international airlines for different parts of the world. And some of the exports of Bangladesh garments and coming straight to Delhi and using Delhi International Airport as their export hub. And also Bangladesh is looking at different ports in India as a place for their export and import, because the BIMSTEC Maritime Cooperation Agreement, which is coming up, plus India-Bangladesh ratified coastal shipping agreement. Actually, India allows Bangladesh to utilize the ports and shipping networks in India's as kind of their own. It's kind of bilaterally, we have removed some of the distances and barriers. So what I see, if you give them concessions, if you remove the barriers, this kind of business will obviously, good for integration, because relocation, moving from a crowded Bangladesh, very crippling airport like Dhaka, very crowded garment manufacturing region, to a very less dispersed area in India and elsewhere. It's a good for an economy and economic. In the process, what will happen? There will be job creations, there will be uplifting of the businesses from a higher quality, less labor, high technology kind of thing. So disruptions, Bangladesh has attempted to utilize, in their way they would like to be. But remind you, this is a scenario we have offered in a bilateral before the current things happen. Let me come to BIMSTEC, a Bay of Bengal cooperation, a little bit, in terms of trade. As I'm an economist, I will economics profession. I'm not going to talk more about political or geo strategic issues. One which I really do not have much expertise. Four things, because trade is one of the important components to integrate countries. So there are four graphs. First is that if the intra-BIMSTEC or intra-regional trade, Bay of Bengal trade is rising or not, it is rising over time. There is a no free trade agreement. So that means there are bilateral free trade agreement like India, Bangladesh in context of SAFTA, India, Bhutan, India, Nepal, India, Sri Lanka, but without any regional free trade agreement. That trade has grown up. This is a sign, you agree with me, the figure one tells you that this is good for Bay of Bengal integration, particularly in the post-pandemic, because rise is quite steep, 2019, post-2019. Graph 2 tells you some kind of forecast. Please refer to some of my publications. It has a high, present trade is about 57 billion trade volume, but it has a potential to go some 80 and 201, but don't believe in this forecast, even if I have done it, because these are numbers we generate using some econometric model, but it's far from the reality. But good thing is a feel good, Forecast gives you a feel good that it is growing. That's good. And the figure number 3 tells you who contributes. So it is 2 countries, India and Thailand. So SAARC or South Asia, we always feel, a kind of an attack by the participating countries and member states. India is a large country, it monopolizing everything. It doesn't allow us to grow. It has, several agenda in their mind. We are very, very, very concerned about India, etc., etc. But Bay of Bengal, we do not have India only. We have a Thailand. They are also equally 2019 and 23. You can see both of their contribution means other countries, they are depending on them. So market access, India's to them has gone up, and India is certainly allowing Bangladesh to have more garment exports, or a processed food from Bhutan, or a Nepal, or Sri Lanka's harbor, which is using by India's exports and imports for the ports, and so complementarities, also as important. Well, whatever I have been telling, if there are serious economists like Professor Mathur who is attending, he must be laughing on me, because I am really, talking in a very common sense, in a very much simple way. And interregional trade comparison with the BIMSTEC compared to Sussex, SAARC, GMS, we're really not that bad, in a covered time 2019. 4 figure tells you that there is a rising amount of integration, there is a hope. Let me look at the economics. 7, 10 countries, they will stay together if there are, regional disparity, if there are gaps in the income. They will, not participate if there is a convergence of the income. Well, simple as that. So if you compare the decadal part of it, Bangladesh has grown much faster in the first decade of this century. India has grown much faster the second decade of this century. And the third decade, which is the one which is ongoing, I have given you the growth rate. It is about in India. It is about other countries as well. See that Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, and Thailand, they are all, except Sri Lanka and Thailand, all are contributing, who are growing economics. They are growing. The growth rate, there could be a dispersion, obviously, because sizes are small, sizes are big. Here, one point need to be talked that over time, like 23 or 24 years, Indian economy has grown. So also in Bangladesh, 53 billion, it wanted, half a trillion GDP size, and they would like to be by 2020, 2031, they would like to be one, kind of 1 trillion economic size. That's the Bangladesh's the dream, is it? But is the current regime in Bangladesh, I'm really very, skeptical until they bring kind of a stability. I would like to know, from them, what's their plan actually. In short, growing economies, there is also, expanding regional prosperity. There is an economic divergence long term. This divergence needs to be converted into a convergence, as happened in European Union. But when it is going to be happening, I really do not know. But as far as I'm concerned, there are gaps in the economy and the per capita income. Myanmaris, Nepalese, or Bhutan will, continue to look at in India or Thailand for their rise and staying together. When I talked about Bhutan and Nepal, so far the Bay of Bengal is concerned, they depend more on us, not Bangladesh, India, or Sri Lanka or Thailand, because 97% and 68% of their global trade actually with the Bay of Bengal. So we need to be very cautious in taking up policies, steps, in the Bhutan and Nepal. A regional program, regional integration, it moves on. If you leave aside politically, the bigger economies, how much they contribute. So India's contribution, Thailand contribution, in terms of accommodating the interest of the smaller, vulnerable economies like Maldives or a Nepal or a Bhutan, like that. And so for the investment is concerned, there is a rise in the investment, but these are investments something in the Bay of Bengal. It's not a free flow except Thailand and India. because there are restrictions, but the numbers tells you that along with the trade, if the trade is rising, without FTA, regional FTA, if investment is rising, that means there is an high interest of the member participating countries in the Bay of Bengal. And it would be politically unsustainable if we restrict the FDI flow. That's what I would like to say. But is India doing enough? India is the first responder. It is not that I'm an Indian and I have an Indian passport. I'm living in this country. It is not that. But India is always the first responder to any crisis. Yesterday's discussion with the Indonesia context. We have seen it. RIS, India Indonesia cooperation. That India is the first responder in maritime. India is the first responder when there's a disaster happened. In the time of COVID, India was the first responder to extend COVID vaccines to Sri Lanka and to Bangladesh and so on and so forth. I compared it to China, but there are several papers we have written, including mine, in terms of availability, affordability, and accessibility. It was very high, India's vaccines. So India remained contributing to the, it is true that we haven't utilized BIMSTEC secretariat as a point for distribution of the vaccines. There was no need for it because BIMSTEC secretariat doesn't have much kind of capacity. But India as a nation, it has extended as a first responder to the COVID vaccines. Then what's the challenges in the economic front? Basically, it's the tariff. It's not the issue. It's the high tariff. It's the lack of seamless connectivity. FTA is not concluded. And there are, inter-regional investment issues, which I have discussed. And to my knowledge, what kind of an achievement, and then if you put them telling them, in terms of good, slow, moderate. So we get a kind of a mixed picture. Tariff liberalization, good. That's not because of, anything else, but that's because of our WTO commitment. Sometime, we look at, our regional or bilateral tariff liberalization, but we haven't done much on non-tariff Bay of Bengal countries. Customs cooperation, investment, technology cooperation, etc., etc., etc. So far, the trade facilitation, it is purely unilateral, and India, Thailand, 100%, they have made their commitment done at WTO. There are good progress with Bangladesh. Myanmar and Nepal, Sri Lanka is yet to be. There are good progress in the Bay of Bengal countries in terms of utilizing the digital sustainable trade facilitation. There are good progress in terms of trade in local currency. There are country like Bangladesh, which has given us a direction on the paperless, contractless trade. Many of the other Bay of Bengal countries, they have not signed framework agreement for the paperless, cross-border paperless trade agreement. So what I mean that trade is growing 57 billion, the regional trade volume that's come out without any free trade agreement. Trade facilitation without any regional commitment. Mostly it's a global commitment that has, or unilateral, that has actually helped the countries to rise their regional trade in the context. A little bit more about what are the issues on Bay of Bengal. Countries sometimes for the WTO, they do transparency aspects, formalities aspects, institutional aspects, paperless aspects when it comes to the national part. But they have not done much about the cross-border, except India and Thailand. India has a very rich trade facilitation program. We can discuss in some other forum about such and such those India's global commitment, India's contribution. So Nepal and Bhutan, they are landlocked and they are way behind us in terms of trade facilitation paperless. So if you talk about the Bay of Bengal economic integration, the first and foremost is Bhutan and Nepal need to bring upfront to connect with us on the cross-border part. This is kind of a recommendations. And if you look at the country-wise comparisons based on the UN data, that is India has done quite well in paperless. So far, it is domestic issues and domestic part of it, but cross-border part, most of the country doing nothing, but India has a little bit. But all I recommend that if we need to talk about Bay of Bengal integration, cross-border paperless or contactless sustainable trade facilitation to be given a priority by every participating countries. And I've given some more how can we strengthen that paperless or contactless? Is it a huge task? Does that require our finance minister to come out, add something in an annex in her budget space? No, it is lying with our for example, in case of India, the customs office, 6 agreements need to be ratified: laws and regulation of electronic transaction, recognition each other by certification authority who are certifying the laws and regulation, electronic exchange of custom declarations, electronic exchange of certification of origin, electronic exchange of sanitary and phytosanitary certificate, paperless collection of the payments from documentary. And I've given the marking the who has done what. Green means that they have done it, red not yet, yellow is in the in between. So you can see most of the countries work in progress basically. Let's come to the software side. Let's come to hardware side. And very quickly, because I have very limited time here, hardware projects, because in the region wise there is no such kind of BIMSTEC or Bay of Bengal connectivity program. No, I think it is all about unilateral, bilateral, or trilateral kind of thing, and that's also on the best end of our basis, based on primarily extending free money, the grant, very limited on the lines of credit based on lines of LOC. Some of the projects done by the Japanese or in their Bay of Bengal growth corridor projects, some by India, like the 3 corridor, India, Bhutan, India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Bangladesh, these projects, which are the new corridors, and they need a kind of a new type of cross-border trade facilitation. The first in my left-hand side, in your right side, which is basically the Bhutan's smart city and connecting them with the Assam in Jorbat by railway line, and then bringing it to Dauki, Tamabil, and then going to the Bangladesh Chattogram port. Other one is the bridge between Dhubri and the Fulbari and going to the Tura, and then it is basically a border point in Bangladesh. And the third picture, Sabrum and Chattogram Matarbari connectivity. Bangladesh is coming up a new port with the Japanese investments and connecting it with India's northeast. And once this port is ready, an economic zone, I do not know the current caretaker government in the Bangladesh, they're going to allow us, or they're going to talk for in Sabrum Chattogram Matarbari corridor. I really haven't seen it, but it is too much. It's too early to seek a comment from them. But hopefully they will continue with kind of a futuristic projects like this. When it comes to the Bangladesh, several countries they are contributing to. No, not that India. China has also a very strong presence. So also many other countries, Japan and all. What are the India's projects in the Bangladesh? Those are having a regional implications. I've highlighted some of them. Projects like SEZ, Indian SEZ, that's Mirsarai, which is basically done by the Adani. There are still projects co-financed by the Exim Bank of India at a Mirsarai SEZ. There's a Monglas SEZ, which is done by Hirnandani Group. The 2 SEZs, these are the bilateral projects, but implications are regional because still products will be marketed globally or going into Indian mainland or somewhere. So that is why I said that they may behave like a bilateral. They will generate job for the people of the Bangladesh, but they have a kind of projects. Similarly, the Matarbari project, which is done by the Japanese, it has a high regional global implication basically. So none of the projects are purely domestic type, port development, etc., etc. So and Sabrum, which is the connecting point in the northeast, which is going to be a new gateway, and where Indian, as government has extended the railway line. We are expecting this bridge over River Feni, but in the history, last 34 years, no flood. And the Feni River, which we have seen in the summertime, it is not even a river. It's not even a canal. Not even a canal. It has flooded. Feni River is actually come from Bangladesh. It comes to India, then goes back to Bangladesh again. So this is the bridge on River Feni, connecting Sabrum and Ramgarh in Bangladesh side. We were expecting that 14th August, The passenger will be coming from Bangladesh. This SEZ, the sub-room ICP is already inaugurated with the Prime Minister before election. We wanted that this to be formally inaugurated, but it is, we are expecting on 14th the tourists and passengers, but we got postponed. But Bangladesh, India, SEPA, Bangladesh, Japan, SEPA, we are still hopeful. These three things is going to have, change a lot in terms of Northeast linkages and connecting it with, connecting it with the rest part of the Bay of Bengal. What are the other development? If I'm sounding too much about Northeast Bangladesh to come to the eastern side, many projects are happening. Petrapol Benapol side. I'm not going to, a project like E-Subida by the World Bank, development of land port management system, it has changed the way we used to talk about, land connectivity, etc., between India and Bangladesh, and several projects. Pardon me, because of the time, I cannot going in detail. There are small projects, government of India, government of Bangladesh, government of Bhutan, they are implementing in terms of border connectivity, railway, highway, maritime, IWT, economics, infrastructure, aviation, bus service, trade facilitation. I rank them in terms of progress. I've identified their projects. So many. There are projects, small projects, but high impact, like in the Bay of Bengal, like the energy pipeline between India, Bangladesh, India, Nepal. You go to Nepal or in Bangladesh, areas which is the Dinajpur side, Rangpur polluted, crossing the border with a oil tanker. Now it is coming very greenfield projects. So these are energy is an area which is we have done phenomenally well in terms of exchange of oil, exchange of electricity. From India side, it's unilateral, the International Solar Alliance, technology sharing, where like International Biofuel Alliance, where Bangladesh is part of it, International Solar Alliance, Bangladesh is a part of it. Many other Bay of Bengal countries also have joined, or might be some of the join. Energy front, we have done, connected our grids, but not fully operational. Some projects are going to have a big game changer, like the Tata Group's semiconductor projects in Assam, in Morigaon, with an investment of 27,000 crore. I'm sure this kind of projects Bangladesh will very much get into it. Then we have an Gelefo mindfulness city in Bhutan. We have a Dhubri Fulbari corridor, Matarbari projects, deep sea port, Sabru Matarbari corridor, Agartala, Dhaka, Kolkata railway line. These are the projects.
Probably, sorry to interrupt you. Can you conclude in 2-3 minutes?
Yes, sir. I'm just.
Yeah, because then we can have some discussion on each presentation.
So these are some of the projects which are going to be kind of a game changer in the region. And Bay of Bengal means also the projects like trilateral highway, which is continuing for some time. This Kaladan multimodal transit transport projects. On the Kaladan, the port part, which is between India and Myanmar, it's not part of exactly the Bay of Bengal. It is operational, and since last year, there is a project called Mekong India Economic Corridor. There is a project like Dawai Port and Special Economic Zone, which is Indian companies like to invest in there. There are 2 new corridors coming up in the Bay of Bengal, which I have discussed a little bit about it. And looking at those changes, there is the industrial value chain. It's going to see the new, it's a new phase, or it's kind of in a new development phase in a way, if they are continuing to do this kind of connectivity across the border. There are 3 pillars which we have identified, basically to support hard infrastructure in terms of inland waterway transportation, soft infrastructure, basically digitalization of custom procedures, plus training and capacity building. So far, these are basically Bay of Bengal, according to me. But if we come, what's the BIMSTEC? How it is different? as I said, the BIMSTEC is an offshoot of the Bay of Bengal Cooperation, 7 countries, but now 7 countries are called member states, by the way. If you see their statements, it's called member states. Very deep, they have signed charter. It has come in effect. 6th summit to take place this year. In between, there are policy-making bodies in the BIMSTEC. There are 5 steps, but they've introduced a foreign ministers' informal retreat, and it was held in last month. So there are some experiments by the leaders to give it the BIMSTEC, and the process for integrations. What happened in the last 27 and 8 years? These are some of the milestones we have crossed. Last 3 is basically an EPG, eminent persons group, are formed. They are in interaction each other. The reports to be presented at the coming summit. As said in the beginning, that summit is postponed for the time being because of Thailand is not yet ready. That is, the BIMSTEC charter has come in place. Charter allows that each 2 years will have to be a fresh summit, etc., etc. And quickly, I will pass on this. I'm not going to read out or discuss. Purely an academic purpose, if somebody has a plan to write some kind of a review. We had a first BIMSTEC summit in 2004. The point I need to tell you, there are similarities between the summit process. It is about people to people and connectivity. And there are, not in a very frequent manner, all the summit happened, like in 2004, first summit, 2008, and second summit, 2014, after 6 years, and third summit. In 2014, we see 3 major agreements signed when Ambassador Sumit was driving the secretariat. There in between, there was a BIMSTEC retreat in 2016. There was a summit in 4th BIMSTEC in Kathmandu, and there are some decisions. Last summit in 2022, it's done virtually, where BIMSTEC's charter signed. Then there are several instruments were signed in, like the project for connectivity master plan and something, and so on and so forth. 5th summit has given kind of a push for connectivity again in the BIMSTEC process. After the 5th summit, transport, their connectivity working group, they met, and 19th foreign ministers meeting happened in 2023. These 2 was actually helped reshape BIMSTEC integration process. And they thought about, let's complete about our maritime cooperation. Let's come out with a sustainable development like Vision Statement 2030. Let's give a big push to the motor vehicle agreement, frigate agreement, so on and so forth. Well, I skipped this because little bit I have covered, and the chair has asked me to conclude. I come at very last part of my presentations, that what's the policy agenda I can draw from my Bay of Bengal talk. Well, there are 7 policy agenda. I draw basically to focus more to the digital part, value chain, application of the digital to support the value chain and production linkages, application of the digital for the border management, safe border, treating border as a single unit, renewable energy, several climate issues, disaster management. Many of the BIMSTEC countries, Bay of Bengal countries, are not ready with green financing of our climate commitments like that. So there could be some kind of a regional program. So, since charter is in place, strengthening infrastructure, roping in different international partners like ADB, strengthening in knowledge center of the BIMSTEC, those are very recommendation. If we have that kind of our vision, then the key recommendation from my point of view, we haven't done so far, that regulatory compliance part, procedural transparency, universal standard, achieving universal standard in products or the process, cross-border payments, digital, trade digitalization, and trade facilitation. So key recommendations are on that line, same line. These are the things I would like to drop it here. Way forward, look, Bay of Bengal is the golden heartland. Somehow the current regime will pass over, but it will remain as it is in the history. High potentials, but mostly unrealized. Realization doesn't depend on the 7 or 10 countries. It depends on the global situation. Today, it is not that much conducive. We have done some connectivity, some projects at a bilateral, trilateral, but regionally not yet. We have not yet, implement master plan. Secretariat is not yet empowered in that way, with the resources. But there are some changes in happening, positive changes. There are dialogue partners. The Secretary General has been telling in his speech, the current Secretary General, we need to bring some more countries as a member states, like Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. In his speech, I quoted that actually in the Bay of Bengal process, because these 3 countries share the Bay of Bengal waters, plus coordinating, engaging with ASEAN, SAARC, several other organizations, completing the summit process. Last slide, what are the takeaways or the conclusions? Summit is important. It has to be done as quickly as possible, because 6th summit, there are some, several instruments we have negotiated. It needs a signature, like Maritime Transport Corporation. Maritime Transport Corporation actually will empower, provided they all ratify, to free flow of goods and passengers in the Bay of Bengal between the member participating countries if they have national flag carriers. Point number 2, that BIMSTEC guidelines for maritime component for humanitarian disaster relief. Today, the flooding situation in India, Northeast, and Tripura state in particular, in Bangladesh, had we have signed this, easily, or other participating countries could have reached out with a maritime humanitarian disaster or in assisted disaster relief. Because of the regional agreement, we haven't signed it. It is there for so many years, actually. And memorandum of understanding between BIMSTEC and other several international organizations, rules of procedure for the BIMSTEC mechanisms, and BIMSTEC Vision 2030. So these are, the instruments BIMSTEC countries negotiated for signature. It needs to be signed, ratified, and implemented. There are several risks, including political. The current situation in Bangladesh is certainly, needs, there should be a stabilization. There should be some good feelers coming from Bangladesh, reciprocated by all other participating countries. More discussion, engagement with the Japan, those who are in a very honest partner, and other Bay of Bengal countries to be part of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Probir, for this very exhaustive presentation. Sorry that
No,
we have
absolutely,
more to
sir.
share, but the time is not on our side, so I had to interrupt you. I'm very sorry about that. Before I open the floor for discussions, Probir had already recognized the presence of a good friend, Sumit, Sumit Nakandala, who was the first Secretary General of BIMSTEC. I want to recognize his presence here, and I would request him to share his thoughts, Sumit, if you may, on this very important issue. This discussion will get immensely enriched, by intervention. So you have the floor, Sumit.
Yeah. Thank you, Biswajit. Nice to see you, even virtually. And I think Prabir has done an excellent presentation as usual. In fact, some of these things that he explained, we have been discussing all these matters for now years, since 2014, since the establishment of the BIMSTEC Secretariat. What we hear, naturally, of course, every forum which we participate in the regional integration of the Bay of Bengal, the normal criticism is that BIMSTEC has not done much. But I tend to disagree, because the regional integration process takes time. And also, it is a very expensive business. Regional cooperation and integration is a very expensive business. That has to be kept in mind. Biswajit, you and Prabir know, both have been working on the regional cooperation and integration for some years. You know how difficult it is. Prabir, of course, due to the the official affiliation. He basically focused on the economic side and connectivity. But I think what is necessary is one point I would like to make. The BIMSTEC is a member-driven organization. So desires of the member states will take the process forward. If the member states are, or even one member state is not interested, the whole process will not move forward. So that's a problem. Therefore, what is important is to provide the political leadership from the member states. I think we saw that in 2016 during the BRICS BIMSTEC outreach summit, which was held in Goa. We agreed, all the 7 countries agreed to a 16-point agenda. And some of these things which Prabir explained, the BIMSTEC Motor Vehicle Agreement, BIMSTEC Maritime Cooperation Agreement, and Custom Cooperation. And in fact, we also talked about the BIMSTEC Trade Facilitation Agreement. But whatever it is, we are still stuck with one thing, that is the BIMSTEC FTA, Free Trade Agreement. Now, what we did actually, BIMSTEC FTA, we negotiated 4 agreements together: trade in goods, trade in services, investment, and then custom cooperation. So that has to be reinvigorated. We hope that 6th BIMSTEC Summit will provide some kind of impetus and encouragement and directives. That is important. The other important thing is that, as Prabir very rightly said, that BIMSTEC Secretariat should be empowered, providing much more resources, both financial and personnel. We are still waiting to see the EPG report, which will be submitted to the 6th summit. I think the integration process in the Bay of Bengal is on the track. It takes time, and we also need to be patient. What provides me this confidence is, as Prabir started saying, the shared civilization, shared culture, and the people-to-people connectivity. And in fact, I would like to recommend the students of Bay of Bengal integration to read a wonderful book written by Sunil S. Amrit, Crossing the Bay of Bengal. What a wonderful book is, goes to the history. So I think I'm very optimistic, Biswajit, that this integration process will succeed. Thank you very much for giving me this time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Sumit. It's always a pleasure listening to you, and with your experience of shepherding this, this grouping, from the initial years of the establishment of the secretariat. You have actually laid the foundations for a strong BIMSTEC going forward, and we are very sure that all the little pain points that you have mentioned. I think as countries start seeing the advantages of coming together, and I think that's a very important aspect. And I think that's where I think the academic community, the policy research community has a big role to play, in the sense that all the areas in which economic cooperation can actually take place and can thrive. Because in today's world, we are actually looking at all these production networks, and strengthening of production networks that actually lead to greater integration between countries. And I think that's an area where the researchers could do a lot of thinking, provide guidance to the policymakers as to how this process of identifying the sectors in which these production networks can be established and strengthened. That work needs to be done.
Yeah.
Because policymakers like people like you, you won't have the time to actually go into the nitty-gritties of how this thing can the integration can take place on the ground. This is for the academic community along with the business. They have to do it. No, I just wanted to share this thought with you that when you look at the successful cases of integration in Asia, ASEAN is sort of stands out, and this region actually recognized at a very early stage that there is a value in coming together and forging economic cooperation. And once this happened, and then sort of this common will of the people to help each other and sort of do well economically. Now that was recognized. The political problems and other things, they actually got pushed at the back burner, and it was a kind of a win-win for people. It's not as if the border problems and the political problems don't exist. They do, but then in the interest of the economic well-being of the grouping, I think everything has been pushed on the back burner. So there is something that I think BIMSTEC needs to understand in terms of the dynamics and in terms of the confidence building measures that we need, and we need in plenty. I think these should be taken up. And again, my appeal is to the policy research community, like you did, that they should actually put their heads together to find a way forward. Thank you again, Samit. Wonderful seeing you after a long time.
Right, thank you.
We now open the floor for discussions. And as Ritika had said in the beginning, that please identify yourself and ask a question to the to the speaker. Please, and if you have a comment, don't make it too long. Yeah, again, in the interest of larger participation. So the floor is open.
Yes,
Please ask your
Professor
questions
Vinod.
or comments. Thank you.
There is a question in chat box from Ms. Chinmay Rahangai. She is a PhD candidate at University of Delhi. Her question is directed to Professor Day regarding the postponement of sixth BIMSTEC summit. What are the internal dynamics of Thailand that had led to the delaying of the summit, and is it going to have an impact on BIMSTEC?
Well, yeah, because very last moment summit is scheduled on 4th September, 3rd September for ministerial meeting, but because of change in the government in Thailand government communicated that they are not yet ready. Well, the 6th summit was supposed to take place in the end of November last year. That time also Thailand government introduced, the reasons given by Thailand government, they are not ready this time also. So certainly these are, as I said in my presentation, there are 6 instruments which are negotiated by the 7 countries for their signature. And until they meet, in person, these agreements, they won't be able to, go to the next step or next stage. So this is very right. If the summit doesn't take place, integration process will certainly, slowing down in any way. It will be further slowing down. So first and foremost is that leaders must meet and sign these instruments, and they pick up, new other instruments for the region. These are, remind you, 2022 was the charter was signed. It came in effect in 2024. It took about 2 years. So these agreement, if they sign in 2024, I presume that maybe not in September, sometime this year, it will come in 2026 or 27. So certainly, more we delay, integration process will be further delaying. So that's my response. Yeah, there is another questions. Yeah, thank you.
There is a next question from Ms. Neha Bansal. She is the founder of Asianism Retold. Her question is directed to Professor Deyafin. While it is encouraging to see the growth in trade, what are the main constraints with regard to future and further growth of this regional trade? And she would like to request Professor Day to speak a little about para-tariffs, which is a problem in the region. Is this a barrier to future growth of trade for the region? Two, what can be done?
Well, the trade barrier in context of Bay of Bengal, South Asia needs a long session, many days. This is a kind of, the barriers are so much. But only if I may reduce in a couple of sentences, is that first is, 7 countries, as former Secretary General rightly said, that regional integration only happen when the participating countries, they contribute. In terms of trade, some are the bilateral partners. Their bilateral arrangements are very deep, like India, Bhutan, or India, Nepal. But when it comes to region, or India, Sri Lanka, when it comes to the region, we haven't concluded the BIMSTEC Free Trade Agreement. So, and BIMSTEC Free Trade Agreement, as Ambassador Sumit Nakandan rightly said, there are 5 instruments, the 5 paths. Those all need to be negotiated together, then it will come in effect. So, in short, in responding to the queries, there are plenty, barriers on the non-tariff fronts. NTMs, we call them in terms of standards, in terms of rules, regulation, regulatory obstacles, in that way. Second is on the terms of para-tariff. Well, as in my presentation, what I have said, that since they're all connected by border, trade at the border is growing, and because of the para-tariffs, which each member countries they introduce to protect their domestic trade out of the turn. And I given some examples is that the positive list of trade, that India cannot export free, cannot export items of their own choice, and the demand, counter demand by the Bangladesh from any of the ports. There are port restrictions by Bangladesh. So also India on exports of Bangladesh. There are several lists, positive lists. There are negative lists. So in taken all together, I think the future of the Bay of Bengal trade, if we need to do, going for a 200 billion kind of thing from today's 50 billion plus, we need to do more, more deeper, decisions, initiatives. That much I can, but it is a subject of Professor Dhar, the chairman, who can give, much better response to it. Thank you very much.
The next question is from Mr. Rahul Kansot. He is a research at the Institute of Chinese Studies. His question is, how are climate change and rising sea levels impacting integration strategies in the Bay of Bengal, particularly in relation to coastal communities and maritime economies?
Well, very insightful, questions. I won't be able to answer because I have not discussed, frankly speaking, the climate issues, and its impact on the coast and in other areas. But if I may, given my presence is, on the subject, of course, climate change and the rising sea levels, particularly in the Bangladesh, eastern part of India, this is, is a great threat to the livelihoods. That much I can add. BIMSTEC process, there is one pillar for, on disaster management, one pillar for agriculture. Those are the subjects, and those are the pillars which are looking after, some of the issues. Climate is one of the pillars of the Bay of Bengal BIMSTEC process. It is a big challenge for all the participating countries, particularly those are, in the littoral states, and must be, it is these, these leaders of these countries or those who are driving the BIMSTEC process or Bay of Bengal process, they must be thinking about it. But I have not seen any kind of a regional program so far on the climate issues in the Bay of Bengal. There was another question which was shared to me through WhatsApp and by Dr. Banerjee, who is attending it. And his question is, what will be the likely impact on BIMSTEC in the short to medium term because of the regime changes in Bangladesh and Thailand? Well, on the Thailand, as I said, I have already responded to it. It is a very seasoned, very, we don't have to worry about it because Thailand has been organizing international events and they have a very high track record because of the change of the government, particularly the prime ministerships and the cabinet. They need to take time, to organize a summit. But Bangladesh is something, which I always tell that Bangladesh is in the driving seat of on the BIMSTEC process, of Bay of Bengal process. Current destabilization is going to have a long-term impact if we don't see any changes happening. And I'm sure this government, Bangladesh current government, is doing a great job. Our best wishes and bring the Bangladesh on track. But if this destabilization continues, BIMSTEC process will suffer. Not only BIMSTEC, all other regional integration process where Bangladesh is participating, BBIN, SAARC, BIMSTEC, IORA, everywhere, this will have an impact. Regional cooperation only prospers when member participating countries, they do not have much domestic issues. Between the participating countries, they do not have border conflicts. Then only. If those are, taking care, those are happening, that will actually spoil and kill the regional integration process as happened everywhere in the world. Thank you very much. Is there any other questions?
Yes, Professor. There is one more question in the chat box from Mr. Karthik Kishore. He's a researcher at Center for Maritime Economy and Connectivity. His question is, the BIMSTEC is about to sign BIMSTEC Maritime Transport Agreement. At a macro level, how will this agreement different from maritime transport agreement that exists in the European Union? As a researcher, should one even compare the integration of BIMSTEC and EU since there is cultural linkages in BIMSTEC region?
Well, see, the European Union, they have formed a single market in terms of trade, in terms of transportation, be it in air, shipping, like that. Single market means all parties, member countries, member states, they do not discriminate each other in terms of movement of goods, services, labor, capital, etc., etc. They only discriminate those who are non-members. For example, the shipping in the European Union, if there is a from a port, in a Bristol, UK, or maybe UK is not a good example because it has taken out from the European Union. Any port in Germany or in Amsterdam, if they would like to serve in any other port in the European Union, no restrictions as long as those are registered in the European Union. No restrictions. Movement of goods, movement of vessels, tax structures, on regulatory part, on tax part. That's what we call a single market. But if a non-EU member like a Turkey or Europe, UK, or they would like to call on to any of the ports, they have to comply with the local rules, regulation, taxes, etc., etc., etc. Same thing is in the BIMSTEC at the moment, except India, Bangladesh, coastal shipping agreement, rest of the countries, we discriminate because we do not have a BIMSTEC Maritime Transport Cooperation Agreement that is up for signing, for signature in the coming summit. Once this is signed, this is not going to change, this is not going to make a single market. This is going to be the beginning for a single market because this will help BIMSTEC 7 countries national flag carrier to call on other ports for domestic and international trade for cargo and passenger purpose. Means a passenger vessel, a cruise vessel registered in Bangladesh, they can pick up passenger from Chattogram, they can drop passenger at Kolkata, they can pick up passenger from Kolkata, they can drop the passenger from any other ports in Bay of Bengal, like that. So same logic continues in the cargo as well. So, but this is the beginning. So I think quickly, I can answer to that. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions or comments by anyone? Any of the participants? I see no hands. So if there are none, I think it's time for us to uh, conclude this very interesting seminar, the presentation by Proveed. I think it raised a lot of interesting issues about the Bay of Bengal Initiative, and as I said at the beginning, that in the absence of integration between the SAARC members, the South Asian integration is on the hold, and there are very little possibilities that this is going to go forward. I think regional integration is in this region is now dependent on what happens within the countries that Robbie talked about. And I think there are several layers of cooperation stroke integration that one can actually talk about. Robbie talked about the integration and the various facets of integration and the moves that have been taken over the past couple of decades. And many of them are extremely significant. They've actually created the regional public goods, and more are on the way. And as I said, my comments to the response to Sumit's points, that I think the countries need to really, sort of sit together, and the research community as well, to explore ways in which the economies of these countries can get better integrated. How they can actually create these production networks, and how they can benefit from each other going forward. The second area is, of course, a major area of cooperation, and one of the questions here talked about climate change. And there are these major challenges that are coming our way, and these have to be met. And climate change is just not about the effect on the rising sea levels, but it's also the glacial melt, where Nepal is extremely worried as to what its future is going to be because of global warming. So we have the two countries sitting on the lap of the Himalayas, Bhutan and Nepal, which are extremely concerned about the impact of climate change. And I would think that there is a possibility of the countries, this region, to sit together and develop a common position on how they're going to be, expressing themselves in the conference of parties of the UNFCCC, among others. There was a time when on trade issues, the South Asian countries used to meet and develop common positions as to how they are going to be expressing themselves in Geneva. Now, all that has actually taken a backseat, and it'll be very important that researchers like Proveed, apart from the work that Proveed and others are actually doing. Proveed is putting in a lot of effort. Sort of start thinking even out of the box, and see what are the areas which will have a longer term implication on the countries, the economies of this region, and climate change is, of course, right on top. So I think there are, what Proveed has done today is actually opened up vistas of for the new vistas for researchers and policymakers to think about regional integration in the Bay of Bengal, region, and how we can take the next steps. Of course, the political process will have its own kind of dynamics. The governments will come and go, and and summits may not be organized on time. They may be actually postponed, like he just mentioned. But I think it's important for all of us to remain, connected with all the issues concerning the Bay of Bengal Initiative, and it is for us to lend continuity to the kind of process that we want to see. And that is very important. That will be very important for the overall process of integration. So with that, I would like to thank the ICS and especially Probir for this wonderful presentation, and ICS for thinking about Probir and asking him to make the presentation on this very important topic. And we look forward to such presentations by senior researchers, also other researchers on issues of concern to this region. And I think that will be immensely beneficial to the entire research community. So with that, let me close today's discussion. Again, wish to thank ICS for giving me this opportunity to chair this session. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I seek your permission to formally bring an end to today's session. With this, we come to the end of today's seminar. We thank Professor Prabir Dey and Professor Biswajit Dhar for gracing today's seminar with their presence and for giving us their precious time. We also offer our gratitude to the audience. The video of today's discussion shall be available on the ICS YouTube channel. We would like to invite you to the upcoming Wednesday seminar scheduled for 4th September 2024. Further information regarding the event can be found on the ICS website. You may also subscribe to our newsletter for regular updates. Thank you for joining us today, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much.